Khor Kok Soon became one of Singapore's most wanted criminals by evading police for 19 years. This was after he caused a shootout that tragically ended in the death of 26-year-old Ong King Hock.
Khor was born on 23 February 1953. He stopped going to school when he was just 12 years old and began his life of crime when he was 13. It all started with petty theft, which then escalated into armed robberies. In 1979, when he was about 26 years old, Khor spent a few months in prison for theft. After his release, he formed a gang with 3 people and they went on to commit up to 15 cases of armed robbery together.
Khor also had a wife and 2 daughters. He worked odd jobs like selling ang ku kueh when he wasn't committing crimes to sustain his family. When he was 31 years old, Khor committed the crime that he became most notorious for, a bank robbery gone wrong, which resulted in a deadly police shootout in Shenton Way. Khor and his 43-year-old accomplice Lim Woo Sang hatched plan to rob people who were carrying large amount of money to DBS Bank.
On the afternoon of 3rd July 1984, the pair set off on a stolen motorcycle to Shenton Way. Luckily, someone noticed some suspicious activity going on and reported to the police in the area about the presence of armed robbers. His accomplice was caught while waiting for Khor to scout the place.
Solid bro, be a snitch. The detective on duty, Corporal Kwek Chek Huang and Sergeant Lim Kia Chin. Hey wait, it's like you and me.
Those are our seniors, can you show some respect please?
Okay, sorry ma'am. The 2 officers tried to restrain Khor, who then revealed the firearm, a .22 Browning high power. He aimed the weapon at them before making his escape. Khor made a run for a passing lorry, climbing onto it with the detective hot on his tail. He threatened the driver at gunpoint and told him to drive Khor away from the officers, but not before firing at Sergeant Lim, who was the nearest to him. Shots were fired back and forth as the 2 officers were joined by fellow policeman Senior Inspector Cyril Star Maria, an off-duty cop who happened to be in the area.
Unfortunately, Khor managed to enter the passenger side of the lorry and he fled the scene. The lorry was later found abandoned in a back alley at Teo Heng Road, carrying the body of its original owner, Ong King Hock. The deceased was found slumped over the steering wheel with a gaping gunshot wound on the right side of his neck.
Police scoured the area for the runaway gunman. They found Khor's blood-stained shirt and were able to determine that he had most likely been injured on his back shoulder. But the man in question had gotten away.
Autopsy reports found that Ong's death was caused by a bullet wound that severed his spinal column. It was suspected that Ong was most likely killed by Khor, as none of the policeman's bullets matched the size of the bullet that took his life. In fact, the bullet was found to be larger than .22 caliber.
Here's where things start to get a little weird. Khor's gun was a .22 caliber firearm, so it couldn't have been from Khor's gun either. It's unsure whether or not he could have had a second gun at that point. After the deadly shootout, police warned the public to stay vigilant and that there was an armed and dangerous suspect on the loose.
They even cooperated with authorities from Malaysia and Thailand in hopes of capturing the wanted fugitive. Khor had even made his way on the top of the most wanted criminal list in 1988.
In order to escape, he asked a local gang lord to help keep him hidden in Singapore before heading to Malaysia with his loot from previous robberies.
Before he left Singapore, Khor sent a handwritten letter to the press, and despite admitting to his involvement in the shootout, he protested his innocence for the death of lorry driver Ong King Hock. Khor lived in hiding for 19 years in Malaysia with the help of a childhood friend. He moved from state to state, working odd jobs illegally to keep himself going before moving to Johor Bahru.
19 years is a long time but confirm he got like a lot of connection to be able to hide for so long.
Khor was eventually captured in Johor by the Royal Malaysia Police. He was 50 years old. He was extradited back to Singapore where he was charged with 1 count of murder for 26-year-old Ong King Hock and 3 other counts of illegally discharging a firearm for shooting at Sergeant Lim. His trial was held a year later on 14 December 2004. He was only charged with 3 counts of unlawfully discharging a firearm with intent to cause hurt.
This was because the prosecution had withdrawn the murder charge against Khor and received a discharge not amounting to an acquittal. Khor was unhappy about the discharge and insisted on being tried for the murder of Ong to prove his innocence. The now retired policeman SI Cyril Star Maria and Sergeant Lim Kia Chin came to testify in the trial.
Sergeant Lim testified that Khor had fired a first shot at him mid-chase before climbing into Ong's lorry, where he fired the second shot soon after. Sergeant Lim dodged the first 2 bullets and fired once in return. He also tried climbing in after Khor, who then tried to move closer to fire the 3rd shot. After failing to hit his target, Khor climbed through the window at the side of the lorry, dodging the return fire from Sergeant Lim and forced Ong and gunpoint to drive them away.
Corporal Kwek had also returned fire once after Sergeant Lim had missed another 2 shots. And by the time SI Star Maria could grab hold of his revolver, the lorry had begun speeding off.
But in Khor's testimony, he denied ever aiming at Sergeant Lim, saying that he fired both shots upwards in the air at all times. And plot twist, he also said that it wasn't the physically slim Sergeant Lim, but a chubby-faced, big-sized policeman, Corporal Quack, who had grabbed him from behind. He also denied having killed Ong as he entered through the left side of the lorry, whereas Ong's bullet wound was found on his right. Khor also said that he was shot in the shoulder at the same time as he witnessed Ong's body slump over the steering wheel, which was most likely when Ong was shot.
The judge at the time, Justice Kan Ting Chu, had commented that the trial itself was unusual, given that it all happened almost more than 20 years ago. I mean, it's possible not everyone's recollections of event is 100% accurate. I can't even remember what I had for breakfast.
It's because you're always forgetful. In the end, Khor Kok Soon, age 52 at the time, was sentenced to death by hanging. Even then, he was reportedly emotional about the verdict and still kept insisting on being tried a second time because he wanted to prove himself innocent in Ong's death.
Wow. Honestly, I don't know who to believe.
Sadly, no one will ever truly know. Khor's family, especially his wife and 2 daughters, had struggled a lot after he went into hiding in 1984. His wife had to raise her 2 children alone while trying to make ends meet because the rest of the family had distanced themselves from them after the case. His daughters were forced to go through lonely childhoods because they were afraid of people finding out that they were daughters of a gunman and suspected killer. Khor was deeply remorseful of having been absent in his daughters' lives whilst in hiding. Understandably though, Ong's family were left confused and distraught when the identity of Ong's killer was still yet to be solved.
Ong's parents were so heartbroken over his death that it took a toll on them, and they passed a year after his murder.
Khor also appealed against his death sentence, but it was dismissed and he was hanged in Changi Prison in 2006. The exact date of his execution remains unspecified.